The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Driven CRM Advanced Service webinar for today. Today we'll be covering functions of our support work order area in an advanced management type setup, including using tasks to manage those work orders, setting up and using service queues, scheduling appointments, and decrementing time from service contracts and tracking products on our support screens. So very first thing that we'll do here is I do not have any workspaces created right now for our support screen, so I'll go ahead and make a workspace for support. And I typically make that a 3-panel workspace there. In mine, I like to put our open unassigned tickets in here, so I'll go into my work order processing component, choose next, and do any of my unassigned work orders. In the top right, I'll put what are called past due work orders in here, which Driven has the capability to assign a due date. So anything that is still open and pending that is past its assigned due date will show up in that component over there on the right-hand side. And then the bottom component, I will just show all general open in-process work orders here. So we'll do assigned work orders as that component. And now that we have that set up, I'm also going to set up one more screen as well for contracts, because we will be touching on those briefly today as well. We won't actually be creating and setting up contracts, but I do want to show you where you're able to access service contracts and information that you can track about that as well. So in that one, we'll use the contract service recurring component. We'll do all active contracts, the top, and contracts what we call in renewal, okay, which is the status of contracts here. All right. So that gets a few workspaces set up for us to work with. Today, let's go ahead and begin with things that are in the support area already, where we want to be able to manage and assign tasks to some of these work orders potentially. So a task environment within Driven is typically related to something that might be project-driven. Tasks are typically assigned for something that is internally done within your company, not necessarily directly involving a client. Let's say, for instance, someone needs to assemble or build something having to do with this ticket, or schedule appointments, or order product. Those would be common examples of things that might be tasks related to this work order. So once you have a work order established within Driven, you'll open that work order here and choose to create task assignments. That one is done from the top menu here, where the orange asterisk is located under the action menu, and you will choose to create an internal task or to-do. So that's the only place that you can initiate this task assignment, is through that screen there, through the drop-down menu here. So we'll choose to do that, and I'll assign a couple of different tasks. So when I assign a task, I assign it to an employee within my company, anybody from the employees list there. I'm going to assign this one to myself, so you see where it shows up on my task screens. And for this one, I will say that I need to schedule repair. Okay. We'll put down that it needs to start today. I need to have them finish this, the scheduling aspect of it, by the end of the day today. So I'll put the due date as today's dates as well. I will not, right now as I'm creating the task, put in a completed date. We'll come back and update that as we actually finish this task. And in the comments area, I will put what needs to be done. So I'll say that they need to schedule a 3-hour on-site repair of equipment. Okay. That is the detail of this particular task that needs to be performed. And we'll save that. Now, two things happen. A task gets created linked to this work order, and an email notification goes off to this employee that a task has been assigned to them. So Barb is going to know that there's something she needs to do involving this ticket. So we'll save that change there. I'm also going to add one other additional task here. So we'll do an internal task or to-do for, let's say, my system administrator to order product. That needs to be completed by Monday, let's say. And I'll put in here the detail of that. Order all parts to repair equipment listed on this ticket. Okay? And we'll save those changes. So that now is a task that's been assigned to the system administrator. If I want to view those tasks and the status of those tasks, I see them right down here at the bottom as open tasks linked to this work order. So I have some visibility here of what's going on. Okay. I also have more detail under the task assignments menu. This is where I would be able to come and specifically update this task, one area where I can update this task. So if I see the tasks under the task assignments, if I double-click on that particular task, I'm able to update that. Okay. And from a very simple view, if I'm the person doing the scheduling here and just says I'm supposed to schedule this, when I finish that, I would mark that task as completed. So I'd come in here, I'd come to the calendar, I'd say, yes, I finished it, I did it today. And me saving that marks this task off as completed or done. Okay, and also sends an email notification to the individual who assigned me that task, the person that it was assigned by here, in other words, the person that created that task. So it lets that person know that that particular task has been completed. Okay. Now, one limit on these tasks is that the only two people who can modify or update that task are the person who created the task, this assigned by person, and the person who the task is assigned to. So not everybody would have the ability to go in there and, if I'm not the system administrator or Barb, I can't go in there and change this ordered product and put in the details of that. It's a security feature, so that way only those two individuals can make changes to that particular task. But everyone in the company has the capability to see that that task is there and has been assigned. So that is managing the task from directly within the work order. Now, also available in there, I'm going to go ahead and actually close out this particular screen because I'm done with that work order. If I want to go into, let's set up one more new tab here, My Items. Again, like I usually like to set up on all my screens. Okay. We'll make it for now a one-panel workspace, and I just want to put my tasks on there. So what I'll do in there when I configure that panel is I'm going to go to the My Items feature component and choose that I want to see either open tasks that I've assigned to others. I want to monitor those and see what's going on with those. So as long as they're still open, I'll see them. Or I can see tasks that have been assigned to me that are not marked as completed yet. You also have the capability to see recently closed tasks. I think that might be in one of my other components here. But so those are options for you related to tasks. So let me see my tasks assigned to others so that you can see where that shows up and the ability for you to monitor and maintain that. So you see here, from a management perspective, I have quite a few tasks that I have created and assigned to individuals. So anything that I've created within here shows up in here, and I can see them, monitor them, update them, do what needs to be done with them. So I see here that the system admin is still supposed to order product. They have not completed that yet. So tasks are very flexible for you, linked to work orders to be able to designate more project internal related items that might be linked to a work order. Your way of kind of assigning projects or to-dos to individuals within your company and have the flexibility to monitor those. That's kind of that first area of our advanced session here. Next, let's talk about the ability to create and set up what we refer to as service queues. And service queues within Driven are like employees from the perspective that that's where they are set up and programmed. So they're here under our company preferences in the employee setup area. They would occupy a what we call employee link here. However, they're used for you to have the flexibility and capability to assign work orders to a queue instead of an individual for responsibility. And these are used in a situation like we, for instance, use them ourselves. I want to be able to assign something to a bugs queue. That way all of our development people can log in, simply look at the bugs queue, and they have one common area where all those tickets are assigned. That way, instead of knowing which particular developer they've been assigned to and having to look at that individual's tickets, I can look at one queue and see them all in one common area. They can be managed from there, updated from there, and closed from there. So setting up a new queue within Driven would involve creating what we call a new employee or resource. So we'll click this Add Resource button at the top of our Company Preferences screen, and we'll choose to enter the information. Now, since this is going to be a type of service queue here, I do not need to input any accounting ID initials because this information typically does not post over to QuickBooks as a sales rep or somebody who's going to be responsible for a ticket. Typically, it's something that's not directly linked to QuickBooks. The department field, so I'm going to leave that ID blank. Our department field, I'd be able to assign this to a department as well. So I want to put this into the service department. I do assign a name to it. That's the name as it shows up in the drop-down boxes in the work order screens. So this might be needs scheduling as the name of its queue, okay, if I can type correctly here. The login ID is a required field within Driven, so I'm going to need to put something in here even though this isn't actually going to be a user or someone who logs in, but I will need to fill that in. So we'll put in scheduling as the name of the login ID here. My mouse is in the way. We don't need to assign it a password since it's not actually going to be logging in. Also, again, since it's not going to be logging in, it doesn't need any access roles, so we don't need to worry about that. However, it would be important potentially for you to assign a time zone and a work email to this because you might schedule something to this queue potentially. You might also need to send notifications to this queue. So in my time zones, I'll go ahead and pick the appropriate time zone here, which I know Eastern Time is all the way down here at the bottom. Okay. And I'll put in an email address. Now, you can add multiple email addresses here if you would like to, again, for notification purposes. Just separate them with a semicolon. So I want to put training.center@drivencrm.com. And I also want to put project.center@drivencrm.com. So anytime something gets dispatched or notified to this particular queue, both of these individuals will be getting an email. Okay. And we'll save changes for that. Okay. So now I have another resource in my list here that is defined as needs scheduling. To use that queue, now that it has been set up and established, I'm going to close out my company preferences setup screen. I'll come back to my support screen here. And my open tickets that are here, here's my one open ticket that I've been working on. As opposed to it being assigned to the system administrator, a specific individual, as it is here right now, I now can come into this Edit Details screen and be able to assign this to the Needs Scheduling queue. Okay. And potentially send an email notification to that person. So I could send an email to that group that says, okay, this ticket needs scheduling. Right away they would get an email that says a work order has been assigned to you. That's all that notification would tell them. It would give them the details of the ticket number, and let them know that's been assigned to them. I'm not going to send an email notification in this case. I'm just going to save my changes there. And now what happens is I see in my open unassigned work orders when I refresh the screen that that is now assigned to the need scheduling queue. So everybody within my company would be able to see that that ticket needs scheduling. And that is what's going on with it. And anybody who does scheduling, who got that notification, could then open that particular ticket, look at the details, do what they need to do to it, and or potentially assign it to the end resulting technician or move it along in your process. So queues are very useful for giving you flexibility in viewing, assigning, and notifying different individuals within your company. So that's how we use our service queues within Driven. Next, let's talk about being able to schedule appointments and scheduling having to do with work orders. Because let's say, for instance, again, in that needs scheduling, I need to schedule a technician to physically go out there on site and repair that piece of equipment. And I know that needs to be done based upon the assignments here and my tasks and what got set for me. So in order to schedule within Driven, probably the easiest way to do that is you need to go to the scheduling screen first, or the calendar screen. So again, I got a lot of workspaces here, but I apparently don't have one for my calendar. So let's go ahead and set up one for that. We'll set up a calendar function and do that as a one-panel workspace again. Configure that one to be the appointment scheduler component and to be able to do the entire scheduler. So when scheduling within Driven, you have the flexibility to see multiple individuals' calendars at the same time on your scheduling screens. The way you do that is when you are in the scheduler, you'll open that component up here and decide whose calendars you're going to be viewing. So right now I want to look at everybody's calendar. So I'll check everybody off and then press the refresh button next to the drop-down list. That now is going to show me any appointment that's been scheduled for any of those people for today. So my calendar apparently is wide open. There's nobody with anything scheduled within Driven at the moment. I can also look at a week view and a month view on the calendar at any time. Okay, so I can see here on Friday the 8th, the system administrator had an appointment here to repair new equipment for the Disney shop. If I need to look specifically at that date again, I simply click on the date from the calendar here, takes me into the day view, and I can see, oh, that was scheduled from 3 to 5 for Donald Duck at the Disney shop to repair the new equipment. And as I hover over that, I see that it is linked to 2 work orders in the system, ticket number 100,008 and ticket number 100,012. And so that's visible to you at any time within here. Now, let's actually go back to the week view here for the current week. I'm in last week right now, so if I want to go back to the current week, I use either one of these 2 forward and back icons or the today option. So that leaves me in my week view, goes to today's calendar. Okay. And I would be able to see that, okay, Friday obviously is open, so I'm free to schedule things for any of my techs or any of my people on here. So let's say that I want to confirm with the customer, okay, we can be out there at 1 o'clock this afternoon. It needs to be a 3-hour-long appointment. I know that based upon the task that was assigned to me. So I would double-click on the time that I want to begin scheduling that appointment. That's the way you start a schedule in Driven. Double-click right here on 1 o'clock at Friday, and it asks me for a subject or a title on the appointment. So this is equipment repair on site. Okay. It's going to be from 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock today. Okay. Who is that going to be scheduled for? So what attendees? It assumes the person doing the scheduling is the person the appointment is going to be scheduled for. But that doesn't necessarily have to be true. I can say, no, it's not going to be Barb. It's going to be Jen and the system administrator. They both need to go out there and work on it. So I can put it on both of their calendars at the same time. Then I choose to link it to a contact in our database. So I have to go say who this appointment is going to be with. Anything having to do with a work order and driven is obviously going to have to be somebody who's a contact, because as we talk about during our main service webinar, you cannot schedule a work order with someone who's a lead in the database. So anytime it's having to do with a ticket, it's always going to be linked to a contact. And then you choose who that contact is. Now, I have forgotten who that particular ticket is with, so I'm going to have to go back and remember what customer that was for. So I would need to know that information first. So let me go back to my support screen here, because I didn't have that on my visible column screen. I want to show the customer name and the summary of the ticket too. So that was for Disney World. All right, so let's go back to my calendar again then, which is my first tab here. Now that discarded my change so far, so I do have to go back here, start that over. Okay, put that in from 1 to 4. Put in Jen and the system administrator, link it to a contact, and go find Disney World. Now, if I had left the ticket open in a separate screen, I wouldn't have had to discard my change. I would have been able to just flip over to my other open window and see it right there. Now, in Disney World here, I have a few different contacts there apparently. I have Nancy Jones, Mickey Mouse, Walt Disney, and Sally Smith. Oh, they're at Euro Disney. Okay, so Disney World, let's say this is with Mickey Mouse. Now, when I do that, the system goes through and looks for any open work orders that are already in there, assuming if you're going out on the customer site that more than likely you're going to resolve all the open issues with that visit, with that appointment. So it automatically linked both of those work orders to this visit. But let's say that, for instance, in this particular case, they aren't going to have time to work on both pieces of equipment, so I'm going to unlink the first ticket to that. I only want this associated to that particular ticket. And I will save that. So now the appointment gets scheduled on the calendar for both Jen and the system administrator. They can see what's going on here. They see that it's a 3-hour-long appointment. It's associated to a work order number, who the customer is that it's associated to. And if I go to my support screen now and open up that particular work order, I will be able to see up at the top that it is scheduled for today at 1 p.m. with the system administrator. Also, you would have the flexibility as well when you are looking at the client's account. So if I go look up Disney World, so I need to find Disney World here. I'm looking at their account. In their appointments area, it shows to me here that, okay, Jen and the system administrator are both scheduled out there at 1 p.m. today. It was created by Barb. She's the one who scheduled the appointment, and it's associated to work order number 100,011. So that is the way that you can schedule things associated to that work order. It all has to be started from the calendaring function within Driven. But that is scheduling appointments and scheduling repairs. Now, please be aware that scheduling that appointment on the calendar simply puts it onto the calendar screen there. It does not automatically enter any service time for that appointment or that visit. That must always be done manually after that appointment has happened. When the techs come back and actually determine how much time they spent on there, they would go enter service time, which is done under that record technician time as we talk about during our general service webinar. So that information will be entered after the appointment happened. Now, I want to spend the remaining time of our webinar today on being able to decrement time and manage time from service contracts, and also tracking products on an individual customer account and linking them to the work orders. So the first portion of that must be established is a contract must already be created. Now, I do have a workspace for contracts in my Driven screens already. I don't have any contracts created that are set as active within Driven. So I must go ahead first and establish a service contract. Service contracts, as we'll talk about them for today, are used for your way of doing potentially two things within Driven. Either if you have customers who have a warranty on a particular product or a certain block or set of time that they have pre-purchased from you that you're going to work off anytime you go do services for them. Or if they have certain discounted rates with you based on the fact that they have a contract. That's where this create recurring or service contract area would be set up. So the contract would get established, and we have a webinar on how to create and set up and manage these contracts. So let's go ahead and create a contract here from Mickey Mouse. And this one is going to be 5-hour block time. Mickey, when he set up everything with me, went ahead and pre-purchased 5 hours of on-site services, let's say. So I would want to set this up as a service usage tracking kind of a contract. The other option for us for service contracts is to be able to use them for recurring invoicing, which we won't deal with today, but is an option for you as well. So I will save and create that particular contract. Then we set up the rules of how this contract works. So right now, down here, since it is set up to use for service tracking, I would need to define all of this information here. So I pick from a group of rates that are available in Driven, and those are set up. We talk about setting those up actually. Let me go create some because I apparently haven't created any in my test database here. We'll call these the on-site rates. We'll add that to the list, and then we'll have another one called non-contract rates. Maybe they're separate. I have higher rates for if you're outside of a contract. So in that, I will, apparently I didn't save my non-contract. I didn't add that to the list there. And it appears as though I have no service items defined in my Driven here too, so I apologize guys, but let me go ahead and actually do one more setup step, and that's to create a couple of service items within Driven, because any of our contracts or services will need to be linked to service type items that come over. I haven't done a lot of services on here. I do have one service item in here called services performed. Let's add another service item. We'll call it service, and we'll put it into general product. We'll call it on-site. And it's $200 an hour. Okay. So now I have that information in there. I now have, close out that screen, go back to my main screen here. I should have two service items. How much is my regular generic service item here is set at $125 an hour. Okay. So we'll go out of here, go back to our contract that we were working on creating. And now, if I choose that I want to define service rate schedules, those are used for what we refer to as being able to link different types of services to that. So it's your way of restricting what service rates are allowed to be chosen, either associated to this contract or associated to a non-contract kind of a customer. So in this case, my non-contract rates, I want to be able to use the on-site labor service option, and only that one. I only want that one available during that type of a contract. Okay, when you're outside of contracts, you always have to pay that particular rate. Let's save that. And I also want to define one more rate schedule here, and that is my on-site rates, which is the one I'm going to link to this particular contract, and that one is available for both of these. So let's link both of those service items to anything related to the contract so they can pick from either the discounted 125 services performed or the on-site labor option. And those rate schedules typically only get defined once, guys. Then what you do is you say that anytime this work order is covered by a contract, I want them to be able to pick from the list of rates that are inside my on-site rates. If it's out of contract, then you pick from a different list of service items, being here my non-contract rates is the one I wanted to pick there. Options for you for rollover, that would be used for our recurring invoice type of contracts where you pay a certain amount per month and you get X number of hours. If you don't use them all, they roll over into the next month. That AT&T phone contract that you used to hear about all the time. Do you allow rollover? The options here are how are those services covered. So right now under this contract, I can say that you are entitled to, maybe you get a 15% discount off any parts that get used. Okay, I established that here. I can either do a percentage or a dollar amount. You're covered for up to $500 worth of any parts that might get used in the terms of this contract. Also, under our service coverages is where you establish this. So I can either give you 100% coverage, which means all of your services are free, or 80% coverage, so you get discounts based upon that percentage, or more commonly probably is to set this up as a number of minutes, a number of hours, or a number of dollars of coverage. So I would be able to say, like I said, this was a 5-hour block of time. I'd set this as time in hours and set it to 5. Okay. Now, options here for how the rest of the contract works, because as I mentioned before, maybe it's not a block of hours. Maybe you get a certain discount. You get 5% off of my normal service rate, 20% off my normal service rate. You would set that here, and then whichever service rate that particular technician picks on that ticket, it would discount that prior to putting it on to the invoice for the customer. So you have a contract with me, you get discounts instead of a certain number of hours. That option is available to you as well. Options as well for being able to multiply things for after hours or weekend/holiday rates. So you could say, okay, yeah, we'll come out after hours, but we're going to charge you time and a half. So 1.5 would be the multiplier there. And on weekends, we charge double time, so 2 times whatever the normal rate is. You can round your time in increments based on contracts. So if you bill in 30-minute increments or 15-minute increments, you would be able to establish that here. So I would say, yes, we round up in 30-minute increments. So anytime this contract is decremented, if I enter 17 minutes, it would round it up to 30 and use 30 minutes from their 5-hour block of time. Okay. A first increment surcharge option that's here would allow you the flexibility to bill a different amount for the first portion of your work there on site. Let's say, yes, it's instead of charging a trip charge, in other words, you could say, yeah, but for us to come out there, the first hour is $300. Okay, so I would set a first incremental surcharge as yes, and say the first 1 hour, which would be 60 minutes in this case, it's always set in minutes, is a certain dollar amount, $300. So then anytime I go out there, if I enter anything under 60 minutes, it's going to be $300. Once I go over that, whatever service rate is linked to that particular time visit would be enforced. So the first hour would be $300, and the hour after that would be whatever rate I chose. And that would happen automatically. Okay. I'm going to set that to no, though, because I don't want that to work. I want you guys to see how these times get decremented and how they get tracked. The last two options here, whether or not overtime charges are allowed on this contract. So in other words, am I allowed to pick from my after-hours multiplier or my weekend multiplier? If that's set to no, then it always use your standard default service rate that's here times regular straight time. Okay. And last is whether or not this is needing to be credited to a certain retainer fund account into QuickBooks. This is for my customers who use accrual-based accounting for money that was accepted up front for time to be worked off after the fact. So not something we need to worry about for this one. I'm going to now set up the last of my options up at the top of the screen here, which is to make the contract active. I can't begin linking this to work orders until the contract gets set to an active status. And I can establish when the contract is valid too. So you only get to use this block of time for the next 2 months. And so I can set that to September 15th is when it expires, and automatically overnight that contract would expire itself, would no longer be able to be linked to open work orders. So I have a contract established now. Let's talk about how you link that contract to a work order and how you start decrementing time from it. So if I were now to go here and see that that customer has a contract, okay, Disney World has a 5-hour block of time. Anytime I open up Disney World's account, which I still have here, when I create a new work order for them, I'm going to pick an individual there, so that's going to be associated to Mickey Mouse. And I am allowed to now specify a contract for that. If no contracts are created, it always defaults to none/billable. But since this customer has a contract, that now appears in the drop-down box, and I can associate it to this particular work order. So we're going to link that to the 5-hour block of time. A new tab shows up over on the right-hand details area that shows me contract notes. And those contract notes are going to be if I had entered any, there's a comments area of the contract. Might be the rules of coverage of, okay, this contract is only covered for 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, phone support only, or whatever the details of that particular contract and how it works would be able to be shown up there. Let's just go ahead and get this ticket open really quickly. I'm going to assign it to me, and this is going to be to fix new machine, no power. Okay, no power on the new machine. Please come fix. Okay, and we'll save changes on that. So work order number got created. It's linked to that contract there. If I want to see again the contract details, how does that contract work? I'm able to see here that, okay, that contract is set up as a 5-hour block of time. Okay. And as I begin decrementing time from that, it'll show to me here how much time is left. What I was mentioning before, the comments on the contract is what shows up over here, where I could say this contract covers on-site only. No parts are covered. Well, also 10%, 15% discount off parts. Okay. So let me save that. Details of the contract have been saved, and that's what's in here. So as your technicians are entering time and or entering parts and supplies on here, they would simply go in once the contract's linked to it. They don't have to know the rules of the contract or how the contract works, because Driven's going to handle that automatically. All they would have to do is press the Record Technician Time button, and they're going to enter that they were there from 10 o'clock this morning, let's say, until 11:30. Okay. The system knows once they calculate the billable time, that's an hour and a half. They pick where the service occurred if they need to, and they pick from the rates that are available that are linked to that contract because it is set to be in contract right now. Okay. The other options that we're over here is where I can set, okay, it's standard time, or it's after hours time, which was that OT1, which was that 1.5 multiplier, or it's weekend time, which is whatever was set in that second multiplier. That would be 2 times right now. So a lot of options for you here when this particular ticket is linked to a contract. So I'm going to do 1.5 hours against the contract here in contract rates at normal time. And I'm going to pick that this is going to be based on the on-site labor service. Okay? And I enter what was done. So we fixed power cord on new machine. Okay? And this was covered. So what happens now, tech doesn't have to know how much to bill the customer or whether or not to bill the customer. They just know it was time on site linked to the contract. Okay? So Driven automatically goes through under the Invoice tab, if we look at this, and says, okay, normally that would have been $300. Okay? But this is linked to a contract. So the amount due is 0 because that was applied towards the service contract that they already have. And if I go back now and look at the contract details, I see, oh, 1.5 hours have been used. There are 3.5 hours remaining on this contract. So additional time is still available to this customer. Okay. Now, also, as I enter parts and supplies here, let's say I used a keyboard. Okay. When I choose that, I'm going to be able to see that the price of that is $5. Okay. And I add that. All right. So that, not being something that is automatically linked to the contract here, okay, and I can see on that particular item that my normal price of the keyboard was $5, okay, but there was a 15% discount on all parts used. So there's an 81-cent discount on that item. So the balance due from the customer would be $4.57. So again, the technician does not need to know what kind of a discount they get. They don't need to know that they need to adjust the price. The contract handles that automatically. So they simply add it, whatever price was set as the retail price of the item, they leave it alone, and the contract makes the adjustment. Okay. So very good way for you guys to establish in the contract the rules of how this works, and then it's in place, it's in force. You don't have to worry about whether or not the technicians applied it correctly or gave them their discount. It's going to happen automatically based on that contract being linked there. Now, one other thing that I want to do for this is I want to actually do 2 other things. I want to record some technician time for something that is going to be out of the contract. Okay, I went out there and found out that they poured water into the piece of equipment. That's not covered under your contract, guys. That's going to have to be billed separately. So the technician would have the flexibility to say, I want to see the out-of-contract rates. Since there is only one rate associated to those out-of-contract rate schedules, it chose that for me automatically. So that's always going to be billed to on-site labor, $200 per hour, and I put in the amount of time that I was there. So from 11:30 until 12:30 was out of contract. That amount of time I spent there was not covered. And I will put in my detail on that. We had to fix a spill into power cord. Okay. And we'll save that. That particular entry, if I go back to my contract details, did not decrement time. Okay, shouldn't have decremented time. Did I forget to pick that? You know what? I did. Hold on a second here. So on my service there for my on-site, for my 1 hour of time, forgot to do one thing here, guys. I picked from the out-of-contract rate schedules, but I accidentally left this at apply towards contract. So it did deduct that time from their contract. So I needed to have set this to no. So not only am I picking from the out-of-contract rates, but it does not get used towards your contract because I'm going to bill you, in other words. So now if I save those changes, I'm modifying that because it has not posted over to QuickBooks yet. And now, I already decremented it, didn't I? Okay. So I would have to go, let's delete that entry. Okay. And I want to go back and let me see if that updated. Yeah, okay, it's gone now. Did it take it off of my contract? It won't go retroactively fix my contract, guys. So you have to be aware of what you're putting in there on the contract time before you get started here. But let's go pick from 11:30 to 12:30 again. So we'll do our 1 hour. We'll do out of contract rate schedule. We'll say that it does not apply to the contract. And we'll choose cleanup spill as our service. When I save that, now that I've done it properly, go back into the contract details. Okay, that new entry did not deduct any additional time from the contract because I said no, it does not apply towards the contract. And if I go to the invoice tab now, that particular entry here in the middle here, that service entry, first of all, is not linked to the contract, so it said none available. On-site labor, $200, nothing credited towards the contract, so that all got invoiced to the customer. So the invoice total to the customer right now is $219. Okay. So you still have the flexibility, even though this particular ticket is linked to a contract, to invoice the customer outside of that contract. You know, a warranty might not cover certain kinds of things, or maybe phone support or something like that is not covered under your contract. So you can always go outside of the contract coverages and still invoice to the customer. Okay. So that's how you would do that, and how time gets decremented from contracts, used on contracts, and all that information. Okay. At any time as well, you can go back to the contract itself. If I want to close this out, I want to go back to my 5-hour blocks of time, refresh that screen. I would be able to see under my visible columns here how many hours are remaining. So where is my parts coverage, parts usage, service usage, and then I can see services remaining, as well as I can see parts usage. How much have they used in their parts for this particular contract? Okay. So they have used 2.5 hours. They still have 2.5 hours remaining on the contract. You can see that in here as well under your detail screen. Okay. So it's visible to anybody who has access to the contract. Right. Then our last item for today as far as advanced service is being able to track products and track those to the work order. So let's go back to Disney World again. I want to keep picking on him. So we'll look up the Disney World account. You have the ability to track what we call registered product. Oh, wait, that's the Disney shop. I have too many Disneys in here. So we did Disney World for Mickey Mouse. Okay. Right now, I can see under their account that they do not have, don't believe, oh, they do. They have 2 registered products according to this. So Disney World right now owns an interface kit with serial number 46781. They also own a 3-button mouse with this serial number on it. So as I am opening tickets to this particular client, not only can I say that we're opening it to the service contract that they have, but here, so now that I put that note in there, now it tells me what my contract notes were. Over here on the right-hand side, under the related products, I can associate this particular ticket to that specific piece of equipment. Here's the new interface kit. I want to link the ticket to that piece of equipment. Okay. And then I can put, there's where the more details comes in then, because this is where I can say fix new interface kit. And I can say parts are broken. Needs repair. On site. Okay. We'll save that change. And now the work order got created. And under the linked products, I'm able to see the detail of that particular interface kit. So right now I can see there's the interface kit, there's its serial number. Under my visible columns section, I would be able to see some additional detail about that if it was recorded on that particular piece of equipment. So if there were any comments made on that piece of equipment, if you add custom fields to that particular product registration screen, those would be able to show up here as well. Okay, so I could see all the detail of this particular piece of equipment. Now, when I'm working with that, then I'd have the ability to, again, add parts, add service, add, anything I need to with that particular ticket. When I close that work order, it's going to ask me how was the issue resolved. Okay, so we installed new power cord. Boom. We're not going to currently invoice anything to the customer. There's $0 amount balance due. So I'm going to finalize that closeout. Ticket gets closed, prompts me if I want to set a follow-up for that customer, and notes that. Okay. Now, when you are looking at that customer's account here for Disney World under Service and Support, is where you see all of their new open tickets. Okay, so they have a lot of open tickets, well, open and closed. Here's all their history here. Okay, I can go to my visible column screen and see other additional information. I can see whether or not that ticket is closed. I can also see the reason code, the service to address, all that kind of information here. Be able to pick that out. And then when I open that particular ticket, so here's that ticket that was closed. Everyone, when they look at it, would be able to see that it was linked to that particular product and that particular piece of equipment. Okay, that must not be the right ticket. But you'd be able to see that in there. And then let me go look back at the registered product here. Under my visible columns, I can see if there are any open work orders associated to that particular piece of equipment right now. So I want to see a couple of different date fields on here too. Okay. So I see right now that the 3-button mouse has a ticket open to it, which was 1101. That ticket must still be open and associated to it. Okay, and this is where I could say special mouse with new buttons. Okay, when I save that change, I would now be able to go see the details of that work order and see what's going on with that. So that means that is an open, unresolved issue that is still linked to that particular piece of equipment right now. So I'd go under their service and support screen now and go look at that particular ticket. It's not in history. It has not been resolved yet. It says everything is broken. And when I go in and look at the linked products here, I'm going to be able to see that. Okay. And I also see that new special comment that I had put in there. A lot of detail that's visible to you about pieces of equipment that are linked to a customer's account and associated to that work order, therefore. So you can track how much time you've spent working on that particular piece of equipment, how many times you've gone out there to visit, to link it. We've been out there 10 times to work on that one piece of equipment, Barb. Maybe we should replace it. Those kinds of decisions can be made from a service perspective. Any questions so far? That really covers everything new from an advanced service management perspective. Any questions that you had regarding the information that was covered or additional kinds of things service related that you might have? You're more than welcome to type a question into the webinar panel there, and I'll try and answer them as I can. I'll go ahead and leave the meeting open for another moment then. It doesn't appear as if there's any questions right now. If you want to type any in that you have, I'll try and answer them, but that really concludes all of our new information for today. So thanks for attending.